Hello, BookTube. I have another tag for you today. I have a large backlog of tags, and yet, despite that fact, I'm doing another new tag. I will get to them all. I will just do a tag every day or so until I have cleared the decks. But the one that I saw now is one that I echo. It's a bunch of really non-bookish related questions that I saw as a tag on the Poptimist channel. David at the Poptimist did a tag called the Coronavirus Quarantine and Coping tag that is basically an exhaustive check-in. And I want to echo that, of course. I'm not trying to court trouble here. I've already been attacked on Twitter because I made a coronavirus book tag myself months ago. But that first of all, was not an attempt on my part to court controversy yet again. I had quite a few of you have a good deal of fun with that, asking me in hectoring tones if maybe I could go just 1 year on BookTube without causing trouble. It wasn't my intent at all, of course. My tag was not meant to downplay the severity of anything. It was meant to get us talking. It was meant to take your mind off things by talking about books. But the Poptimist tag is not even about books, unless books happen to enter into your own questions. Instead, it's just a general lay of the land type thing, and I like it very much. I have been asking check-in questions with all of you on miscellaneous videos anyway, and I leave my email in every video, and a lot of the emails that I'm getting, I get a lot of emails a day now because I do that. A lot of those emails are just people telling me about their day, basically just bending my ear, as we used to say in Iowa, just a shoulder to lean on, just to chat for a bit, and that is fine by me. That's absolutely fine by me. But this tag sort of codifies that, so I hope you'll all do it. I hope this goes the rounds. He doesn't need my help to do that, but nevertheless, it's just a few questions. I thought we'd just go through them together. I'll give you my answers and then urge you to give your own. Question number one is, where are you, and what do your immediate surroundings look like? I'm in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts has well over 41,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. I think we're third in the nation in terms of concentrations. The number of confirmed hospital cases hospital admissions seem to be relatively leveling off, maybe lessening a bit, but I don't know what the reason for that is. I've seen all sorts of national reporting that say that half the time when the numbers seem to be decreasing, it's because people are dying in their homes or going undiagnosed. Testing is still a huge problem in the United States. Nobody knows who's sick and who's not. Nobody knows who's transmitting and who's not. Nobody knows who needs to be quarantined and who doesn't. And that situation doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. It's just an absolute nightmare. I'm hoping, I'm hoping that one takeaway that comes out of this whole debacle is, I have heard it said by many, many news talking heads and anchor people and whatnot, that the thing that's coming out of this is that the states can't trust the federal government. Now, that wouldn't be true under every president. But under this president, under this administration, the states cannot trust the federal government to coordinate, not to steal supplies, to tell the truth in daily briefings. The states can't do that. And a number of state governors have come forward with very proactive plans of their own that don't have anything to do with the federal government. There are some limitations. The governor of New York, the current epicenter of the world, has said many times, I can't do international negotiations with China for equipment. I can't do that. I need a federal government to do that. This is a national crisis. It should have a national solution, but it doesn't. In Massachusetts, we have a Republican governor who is a good egg, but mostly a good egg, and who has risen to the challenge. He's done a fine job in Massachusetts, and that is all I ask. In a situation like this, in most situations, I actually don't care what your party affiliation is. I want to know what your policies are and whether or not you're a good egg. And in Massachusetts, thankfully, we have a good egg. So even though our case number is staggeringly high, 41,000 people, that means, 41,000 people, and of course most of that is concentrated around the greater metropolitan Boston area. With a number like that, that means that if you go out of your house, if you go out and about, you are almost certainly coming into contact with someone who is ill. And that is a sobering thought. But in terms of my immediate surroundings right here around Hyde Cottage are largely benefiting from the stay-at-home order that our governor issued, and there's also a curfew that goes into effect at 9 o'clock every night. If you don't have to be out and about after 9, please don't be. And the benefit here is that the ambient noise has gone down a lot. There's a trickle of traffic, but there's a big road right there, and there's no traffic on it at any time. Now, in the middle of an afternoon on a weekday, with my little schnauzer, I can pick any point on that road and just wait a minute to cross. Whereas under normal circumstances in 2019, that would have been completely impossible, except maybe very early in the morning on a Sunday. Otherwise, go to a crosswalk, no matter how far away it is, and wait. That doesn't happen anymore. There's a vast amount of condo construction in what used to be my beautiful, pristine field, and that has all stopped. That's been stopped for months. It's quieter, is what I'm trying to say. It's much quieter around here. Then question number 2 is, what's the most unusual or abnormal thing that you have done because of this? And for me, there are 2. One of them is, well, I mean, they affect us all. They're all things that we're doing, but for me, they're very unusual. One is to wear a mask in public, to wear a bandana or a covering over the lower half of my face. I mean, I'm working on 300 years of experience where that is something that bad guys do. That is a way that you identify a bad guy, and all of a sudden, the bad guys are the ones who don't do that. It's a bit of a change for a spry 28-year-old to make. And the other abnormal thing is a trial for both me and my little schnauzer, my little Frida Bean. Do you want to be on camera, baby Bean? You want to see your fans? Oh, there you are. They love seeing your face every day. They do. See that? That's where you are. You're on that little thing. I think she knows. I think she's figured that out. Haven't you figured that out? Oh, you sleepy baby. Oh. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. You just lay down. There you go. The other abnormal thing for both of us is not stopping and chatting with people that we meet on our walks. Several walks a day, including one that's usually very long, unless it's pouring rain or freezing cold. And we are both extroverts, to put it mildly. We are both extroverts. So if I'm on a walk like that and I see somebody walking down the street, I will say, "Hi, how are you doing?" If we're on that kind of a walk and I see somebody out in their garden, oh, good Lord, I'll stop and talk. I'll ask, how's the day going? Don't you think this is a little hot for you? What are you planning on growing this year? What kind of work are you doing? Tell me all about it. What have you read lately? See somebody coming out of their big office building and headed towards their car. Hi, how are you? How was work today? That sort of thing. I do that routinely. I'm a very friendly, affable old coot. I've never yet, in other words, what I'm trying to say is I've never yet found anyone who wasn't willing to stop and talk. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that I have an extremely cute dog who also wants to jump up and say hi to people. It could be. But one way or another, we don't get to do that anymore. Either one of us does. Frida, because I can't do it because that just totally destroys the value of social distancing if you're going to stop and chew the fat with strangers who could be infected. And Frida, because in order for her to get close enough, that person has to be that close to me. Her leash isn't that long. Although I've also encountered a disarming number of people who think they can catch this virus from dogs. You can't. So people saying, oh, and stories from other countries of people intentionally killing their pets. Anyway, there's only one confirmed case of this virus hopping a species line in its aerosol form. A tiger is the only example like that. Dogs cannot contract it, and if they could contract it, they almost certainly couldn't pass it on. So, but one way or another, whether it's through mistaken bad information or good information, it's still the same thing, which is that Frida and I are reduced to sort of nodding hello as we walk along, and that's terrible for an extrovert. That's absolutely terrible for an extrovert. I've seen jokes on Twitter. The joke meme going around is, all you introverts, be sure to check on your extrovert friends to make sure they're okay, because this is the introvert's hour of triumph. The shoe is on the other foot. The hunter has become the hunted. Now all of a sudden, extroverts who had a wonderful time generally mocking introverts for how close they come, but not quite to being human. Now all of us are we're on the downside. Anyway, that's the most unusual, abnormal thing that either one of us is doing, is that we are forced to keep our distance. Question number 3 is, what is your coping mechanism? And this is partly why I'm enjoying so much answering all of those emails, and why I'm very happy. So many of you said that these videos where I just turn on the camera and natter are doing you a lot of good. That's what makes me so happy about that, is because I don't particularly need coping mechanisms. I worried that this whole thing was going to cripple food supply, but it isn't. It isn't going to do that. That was my practical worry. Like, that was my main concern. Now that I know that that's not the case, that restaurants and food stores are going to stay open, they are going to keep getting supplied. Now it's just a question of behavioral change, and the behavioral change is to stay at home. And I have my 10-pound bossy little best friend who we are with each other all the time. I am never lonely. And of course, those of you who might be tempted to say, "Oh, well, that's yeah, it's nice to have her around, but that's just a dog's company." We're talking about real company. I think you know what you can go do with yourself, right? Anyway, I have her, and also all of the things that I did, I still do. All the things that I love, the things that bring the main well springs of joy to my life, reading and writing about what I read, are all still true. Emailing, all of that hasn't been changed at all. Not in the slightest. The main sacrifices here, the main things that I might need coping for, but they're so minor that I don't even feel the need to use that term, is visits to bookstores, used bookstores, the library, the Christian Science Monitor's newsroom, that sort of thing. I can't do any of those things anymore. Not even in terms of self-control, those things aren't open. And that's a little bit rough, but not rough enough to need coping. I don't need any coping. I am in a position to help others as much as I can, and that's fine by me. Question number 4 is, can you name something that has given you pleasure during this whole time? And I can. The aforementioned time with Frida, I spend all my time with Frida now, which is, I spent a huge amount of time with her under normal circumstances. In 2019, I spent a huge amount of time with her anyway. But it wasn't all my time. Now we spend all our time together, and that's terrific. Absolutely terrific. But a human thing that has brought me great joy recently is live interactions, teleconferencing of one kind or another, whether it's Skype or FaceTime or Discord. I am slowly dipping my toe in the waters of Zoom. And I wish I could do more of that. Oh my God, I wish I could do more of that. I will get better at that. I love the fact that everybody else does it, and I want to do more of it myself. I wouldn't give to have a regular feature on this channel where I reach out via live stream of some kind or another to other booktubers just to talk about books. That would be so much fun. Oh my God. To have a half an hour to talk about books with David at the Poptimist, for instance, the guy who made this tag, well, that would be a joy. To talk with Olive, talk all the way over in Japan with Sean the Book Maniac, maybe even talk with Britta. And not to mention everybody else. I would love that. Absolutely love it. And I know how to do that. I know how to, not to boss people around, but I know how to conduct an interview. That's what these things would be. I know how to conduct an interview so that there isn't any dead time, there isn't any weird rabbit chasing into odd brambles where you don't want to go, which would be necessary because I don't know how to edit. So it would have to be a one-take thing. But I know how to do that. I've done that before many times. So I would love that. I'd love to do more of that. But the amount that I've done so far has been a joy. And then question number 5 is, what is something you feel will never be the same after this? And I think that the Poptimist intended this tag to be hopeful, to be helpful. And I want to continue that very much. I'm not trying to countervene that when I say that I don't think there's going to be an after this. I hear that all the time on Twitter, on Instagram, on those various teleconferences. I hear people saying, "Oh, when this is all over, or after this, boy, oh boy." And I understand that. I think that's natural psychological coping, but I don't think that's going to happen. If you look at what this actually is, this is a new virus that no one has herd immunity to, no one has been exposed to this before, which accounts for the transmissibility, the huge mortality rate, especially considering that everyone's keeping inside. These rates are still going up. These cases are still going up. People are still dying by hundreds every day at the epicenters. After this, when this is all over, seems to imply this is the only virus of its kind and that this one itself won't mutate. I don't see how that will happen. I think we have entered a new world. Now, the new world could get better than the current version that we're all seeing. In fact, I'm sure that it will. There's one thing humans know how to do. It's cope. We will come up with ways to cope. Down the line, there will be, I hope, a cheap or free treatment, a vaccine, a pill of some kind that you can get at your local drugstore that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg and that will guard you from this in the same way that your annual flu shot guards you. I'm hoping that that will be the case. That will certainly signal that a lot of things can return to a new version of normal, but I don't see how we get an after this. But in the spirit of the question, I have some things that I think will be changed. There's one large group that I think will be changed for the negative, and one large group that I think will be changed for the positive. Bad news first. The negative, I think, will be communal gatherings will never be done without a mental look over the shoulder. Concerts, restaurants, big social events, even milling around at your leisure at a museum. Maybe with masks, maybe with lots of hand washing, gel in every room, gel dispensers in every room, that sort of thing, but not the way it used to be. I believe that we will quickly become accustomed. I think we will still be able to extract a lot of joy out of all of those things. But I think there will come a time in 2022, 2023, when we will look back at pictures from 2018 of the mosh pit of a concert with everybody just brushing, grinding up against each other, no one wearing any masks, no one observing any kind of distance. We'll look back at those and think, oh, wow. Yeah, that's the way it used to be. You can tell exactly when this picture was taken, or at least you can tell before when it was taken. I think those things will all change, and that is a negative for me because I like that sort of stuff. I like just uninhibited, unthinking communal activities, and I think we've seen the last of those. I don't think that'll happen even on a smaller scale. I mean, picture it. Picture your own situation. We're all saying, here on BookTube, we're all saying, God, I can't wait until the bookstores are open again. But how comfortable are you going to be? If that happens, let's say, sometime in the autumn, your retail bookstores open up again. How comfortable are you going to be going into Powell's or whatever when there are 100 other customers in there? Are you going to be comfortable enough to concentrate on the joy of being in a bookstore, or is that going to ruin your experience? I don't know. And that worries me. That, I think, is a negative. But a positive that is going to change after all of this is that necessity is the mother of invention. And oh my God, in the last 2 months alone, societies all over the world, and I would say especially in America, Canada, Mexico, especially in our part of the world, have realized how antiquated a lot of their assumptions were about things that don't need to be that way, especially work. that you don't need to show up at a workplace. You can get work done from home. Your productivity, your effectiveness, your attendance, so to speak, can all be measured. They can all be monitored. They can all be assessed from home. And office spaces cost money to upkeep, to rent, the mortgage, insurance. If you slip and fall at your house, you're on your own hook. You slip and fall at your office place, your employer is on the hook. I think employers all over the spectrum, everywhere, are seeing, oh, well, I guess you never really needed to come here at all. I know humans like to do that, but they don't need to. And that's true with school. It's true with all sorts of freelance work. It's true with a lot of things that don't need to be that way. I picture that will just stay true. I mean, how could it not be? Let's say things start to open up everywhere in the fall. At the rate that the United States is going for new confirmed cases, whether there's generalized testing or not, by the fall and the early winter, a large enough number of people in just walking around in the society will have had this thing so that it won't be, I would imagine, not quite as much the pressing health concern that it is now. because there will be a kind of herd immunity. You have to keep in mind, if this subject is stressing you out, you have to keep in mind you're very unlikely to get this. And if you get it, you're very unlikely to notice that you have it. And if you notice that you have it, you're very unlikely to get sick enough to warrant medical help. And if you're sick enough to get medical help, you're very unlikely to need hospitalization. And if you're hospitalized, you're very unlikely to need a ventilator. And if you need a ventilator, you're very unlikely to die. In order to learn about zoonosis, in order to learn about weird, new viral infections affecting the entire human race that have never affected it before, so all of a sudden there's this huge cliff you could go off. When it comes to the process of an entire world learning how to deal with that, we got off easy. With this being our first time. It could have been much, much worse. Much worse. This virus is fairly weak in a lot of the vectors where it could be much stronger. It could be much easier to get this. And it could be much more tenacious. It could be imagine what would happen if everyone who contracted the coronavirus needed a ventilator. We'd be talking about tens of millions of deaths at this point. This early on in things, we'd be talking about tens of millions of deaths, and we're not. So this, I think, will be a wake-up call to have all sorts of organizations and businesses and whatnot decide, well, okay, we don't ever need to go back to the old way that we did things. And I think a lot of them will. It'll be bumpy, but I think a lot of them will. And I think that's probably a good thing, right? I mean, it's a little awkward now for a lot of people working from home. They've got kids running around. They're finding it difficult to concentrate on their work because there's nothing out external to make them concentrate. But they're getting better at it, and it's better for everybody. David mentioned abusive relationships where it might be that your office was the place that you went to get away from that. Of course, that would be bad anyway. But yeah, that is true. And he also mentioned that he thinks that things like grocery delivery will stay a much bigger part. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. All of the grocery delivery systems in the greater Boston area have no delivery dates. They're just totally blacked out. They're backed up for 50 years, I guess. And they have a working business model that somehow does not include hiring 20,000 new drivers, which hire and orient 20,000 new drivers so that your delivery dates open up again. And instead of your business making $520,000 a year, you make $520 million a year. I guess the food delivery systems in and around the greater Boston area don't really want to make $500 million a year because they're not doing that at all. So the systems exist, Peapod and stuff like that. You can go on their websites and make yourself a nice, happy little cart of necessities, of things that you want delivered to your door. And then when you go to the delivery date section, there's nothing available until 2037. And that's only because they don't have the drivers or the vans. As far as I'm concerned, I'm no businessman, but as far as I'm concerned, now, at the end of April, when the pattern of this whole thing was abundantly clear at the end of January, you should have fixed this problem by now. You should have recognized it as a problem and fixed it by now. That everyone should be able to get delivery groceries. It's insane. I'm lucky that I have marts near where I am, but there are plenty of people who aren't. They have to go to the grocery store because their delivery services are totally booked forever. That won't stay true. In America especially, there is always an underdog. There is always some 3-foot shark who is watching the 6-foot sharks to see them make a mistake. And I'm sure that places like that have noticed, hey, I'm sure that there are people at those places who have done what I've done and gone to each of those home delivery systems and said, okay, they have a lot of product, they have a great distribution network, but they can't deliver. There are no delivery dates, so it doesn't matter. People who want to get their groceries delivered can't get it done because there aren't enough drivers. Maybe we could go at that. Maybe we could steal some business from these companies that seem asleep at the wheel, quite literally. That could probably happen. I imagine we'll see a lot of that. But why, if you're on some sort of board or in some sort of executive position and you used to travel and get a hotel or a B&B and go to the regular meetings of such a thing, and in the last 3 months you have done that all happily and easily with teleconferencing, why would you ever go back? Why would you ever change that again? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. So I think a hard day could be coming for convention centers, for hotels, that sort of thing. But I think it's a good thing. On balance, I think it's a good thing. I think it'd be fantastic for instance, people who are little children right now in 2020. Imagine if they grow up in a world in which mommy and daddy don't go to work all day long, in which they don't, in which they're working all day. Yes, but they can take breaks anytime they want. They're there if you need them. Imagine how much better that would be for those kids. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it does them some good to be away. But but one way or another, that we'll see. I will revisit this tag in a year, and we'll see how the world has changed. That's the one consolation that we can all take from this, is that we are living through history. And that is, living through history is never a good thing, not exclusively. Not exclusively. There was dancing in the streets when a black man was elected president of the United States. A country that is one half virulently racist. That was an amazing thing. That was living through history in a purely positive sense. This is living through history in the far more usual sense, where there's positives and negatives, and the positives tend to be buried. But nevertheless, that's another thing that we can all take from this, is that we all have this in common. All of us do. That is great. Ultimately, that is great. So that is the coronavirus quarantine and coping tag with my answers. I'm not going to tag anybody specifically. I want everybody to do this. We're all going through this. We all have answers to this. And I'm sure the Poptimist, I want to hear your answers to these questions. Definitely. So even if you don't feel like doing this tag, feel free to, those of you who have not already emailed me with answers to these questions, feel free to email me. But I'd love to see it. If you're a booktuber, put your face on camera and tell me how things are going in your plague world. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.